In this video, we're going to complete a table of ratios. And specifically, I want to look at some of the examples with the decimals, like the one that I have highlighted here, part G. And I want to show some things that you can do in your calculator to help you with writing these ratios. So if you haven't already seen this problem, pause the video to fully read everything that's going on around this problem. So here in part G, skipping down to this one, we are given that the diameter of pulley A is 11.44 centimeters and the diameter of pulley B is 14.3 centimeters, and we're asked to express this as a ratio, like so. Well, one thing that we see about ratios is that they do not contain a unit because these units should be the same. Something that we'll see in a future chapter or section is how to convert these units if they are not already the same. So then it becomes a matter of simplifying this fraction. And then when we can after we simplify that fraction, we can put the numerator first and then the word 2 or a colon. And then the denominator second. If you were to try to type in these values here, you'd probably get an error message, and one thing to note is that it does tell us we need to type in whole numbers. So there are a couple of ways that we could go about doing this. Let me move this over for a little bit more space. One way that the text suggests is we could multiply the numerator and denominator by 100. In doing so, we're really multiplying by 100 over 100, which is essentially the number 1. And that's why we can do that, because multiplying anything by 1 doesn't change that thing. So when we do times 100 on both of these, we at least can write them as whole numbers, like this. But again, if I were to try to put that in as 1,144 to 1,430, it'd probably give me some error message about reducing this ratio. So this is probably where you're going to want to pick up your calculator because I really don't desire to divide that by hand. And I could choose either or. I could either divide the first ratio the way I have it written or the second one. I'm just going to go with the first one and then divide by 14.3. And notice that we get a decimal. Well, we don't want a decimal. We want a fraction that we can say this is the ratio of diameter of pulley A to pulley B. So there is a way that I can change this in my calculator, and it's really small here on my screen, but you see right above this key, it says F and then 2 arrows and D. The F stands for fraction, the D stands for decimal, and actually this key is the fraction key, and N for numerator and D for denominator. But I want to access what's above that key, so to do so, I'm going to press second and then that key. And notice that it automatically knows I'm referring to the previous number, and it's going to change this into a fraction. So I may try 8 over 10, but you may already recognize that's still not simplified. So if you want to keep using your calculator, you could come over here to this key, simp, short for simplify, and notice I only press that key. Again, it automatically recognized that I was taking this fraction and simplifying it. And here's my answer. 4/5, or in other words, 4 to 5. So that's the ratio between. There's one more feature I want to show you here on the calculator, and that's underneath the mode key. If we scroll all the way down, this is short for manually simplify and then auto simplify. So I want to select this by pressing enter, and notice it's kind of like a toggle switch. Let's turn that on. And then I can press second mode to quit that screen and come back to the home screen. And if I decided to repeat that operation of dividing these two diameters and then use the fraction to decimal or decimal to fraction key, notice that it automatically simplified it for me. So that's not a bad idea to change your mode to auto simplify, so then you don't have to do that additional step later on. While we're here and we're talking about decimals, I want to look at least one additional part of this problem. So let's look at part H, and we're given these values, and what we're looking for is this one that's been highlighted here. And what we could do is actually use something a little bit further in the lesson, and that's creating a proportion. So a proportion is two ratios that are equal to each other. And so here I could say that the 17.38 centimeters over 5.5 centimeters is equal to 3.16 over 1, or 2/1. Technically, I don't need the centimeters there because they are the same unit. So I'm really looking at solving this problem. Actually, I guess the way I should have written it, right, because I didn't know the 5.5, is I should write here maybe the variable x, we could say. And so I'm looking now for my unknown x value, which I've already got up here as 5.5. So that's what we should end up with. The method here is to cross multiply. And I took this image from page 10. I really like the way it's kind of laying this out for us. With the proportion, we multiply across numerator and denominator and numerator across the equal sign, and we rewrite that equation like so. So the way that looks here is these two values. Oh, I was hoping that would highlight a little bit better. Let me try a different color pen. These values are going to get multiplied together, and that's pretty easy to multiply. We have 17.38, and then these two values get multiplied together. And again, that's pretty easy to multiply. It's just 3.16 times x, or x. Now, I know in the text that they say use the one-step process, and really what I'm showing you here is a two-step process, because notice that x is still not isolated. It's understood to have a multiplication symbol right here. So to undo the multiplication, we divide both sides by 3.16. And I could check that in my calculator real quick. 17.38 divided by 3.16. And sure enough, I get 5.5. So x equals 5.5. And notice I could write it that way. I know I was saying it the other way, but regardless, that if we write it like this, it's still the same thing. And that's the value that would come right here. So that's a little bit further, using the concepts a little bit further in the lesson here on this first example.